Edo-period, 1700. Before sunrise, the city is still, just the scrape of wooden clogs on wet stone and the faint rattle of shutters opening in the pleasure quarter of Yoshiwara. Inside a narrow room, a courtesan sits before a mirror, lit by a single oil lamp. Her face, bare for only a few minutes each day, already looks ghost-pale from years of paint. On the floor around her, tiny porcelain dishes, brushes of rat hair, bowls of powder. She dips a cloth into white paste and begins to cover her skin. The air smells faintly metallic, like wet porcelain. What she spreads across her cheeks is lead carbonate, ground fine as flour and mixed with rice water, the foundation of Edo beauty, the empire's most admired poison. The lead face of Yoshiwara. Courtesans were judged first by complexion. The perfect white face meant refinement, calm, and virtue, even in a district built for desire. The paste they used was called oshi-roi, the honorable white. It hid blemish, age, and exhaustion. It also sealed the skin so tightly that pores could not breathe. The more it cracked, the more layers they added. Pharmacists promised purity. They strained the mixture through silk, perfumed it with camellia oil, and advertised it as snow for the skin. But the same ingredient that made it luminous, lead, also made it lethal. Courtesans developed tremors, sore gums, and fainting fits. Some lost their voices, others their hair. Physicians noted the white sickness, yet clients still praised the women for looking like porcelain dolls. To appear unblemished was to triumph over flesh itself. In the alleyways, used cloths from beauty houses sold as lucky charms, souvenirs still carrying traces of paint. Men touched them, hoping a little of that deadly whiteness would rub off. For the women who wore it, the paste became both armor and sentence, beauty that burned from the inside out, the crimson tears of the Maiko. Far from Yoshiwara's noise, in Kyoto's apprentice houses, the young Maiko prepared for evening dances. Their teachers taught them that red was life, the color of blossoms, of loyalty, of hidden strength. The pigment came from safflower petals, pounded for hours until a few drops of pure crimson appeared, but safflower alone faded too quickly. To deepen the shade, apothecaries added iron rust or traces of acidic salts. Mixed with water, it became beni, lip and eye color, that burned faintly on contact. A Maiko's first application was a ritual of belonging. The pigment stung her lips until they swelled. She learned to smile through the pain. The color bled slowly outward, staining the edges of her cup and the rim of her flute. Patrons described the effect as haunting, a red that seemed alive. Each girl carried small porcelain boxes, lined with gold leaf, to hold the precious paste. Over time, the metallic reaction darkened the pigment to the shade of dried blood. The women knew the risks. Old Maiko whispered that long use left the mouth numb, that some went blind from applying beni near the eyes, yet none stopped. In a world ruled by gesture, a perfect smile was a form of prayer, discipline made visible. As one poem from the period says, "If the blossom stains the hand, it means the tree was generous." At night, when performances ended, the apprentices washed their faces with rice water, watching streams of pink flow down the basin. The next morning they would begin again, layering devotion over damage until the mirror reflected serenity. The red paint did not hide pain. It announced the willingness to endure it. The whale's breath perfume. By the mid-18th century, scent had become as crucial to beauty as color. Edo's elite believed fragrance revealed moral character. The right aroma could transform a commoner into a lady of breeding. Perfume sellers wandered the streets carrying boxes of small glass bottles wrapped in silk. Inside were the most prized ingredients in the empire: ambergris from the stomachs of whales, musk from civets imported through Nagasaki, and oils rendered from fish fat. To the uninitiated, these substances reeked of the docks. To the connoisseur, they were the breath of paradise. The courtesans called it whale's breath, a drop behind the ear, another on the inner sleeve, and the scent would last through the night. Its warmth mingled with the human body to create a fragrance described by one poet as the moment before thunder. Yet the mixture had to rot first, sealed in ceramic jars for months until the oils matured. When the jars were opened, apprentices often turned away, gagging. Only after exposure to air did the smell soften into sweetness. Whale oil was also used in hair pomades. In summer heat, the scent soured, filling theaters and tea houses with an undercurrent of decay that no fan could dispel. Travelers from abroad remarked that Edo smelled simultaneously of flowers and fish, but to the locals it was the smell of civilization, proof that the city was alive, crowded, and adorned. The stench of whale oil on a woman's sleeve carried the same social message as a diamond today. It cost life to obtain. When a famous courtesan died, her combs and perfume bottles were displayed at her memorial. Visitors noted that even in death her scent lingered, sweet as memory, strong as the sea. It was the perfect paradox of Edo beauty, purity preserved by putrefaction. By the late 18th century, physicians in Kyoto and Edo began to record a strange affliction among the upper class. Victims complained of weakness, tremors, and sudden melancholy. Their skin grew pale as paper, their hair fell out in clumps, their teeth loosened. Yet in portrait scrolls and poems they were celebrated as the height of elegance. The illness acquired a name whispered behind fans: Kagami no Yamai, the mirror disease. The sufferers were victims of their own cosmetics. The white powders that signified status, lead carbonate mixed with arsenic or mercury, built up in their blood. But instead of abandoning the paints, aristocrats doubled down, adding extra layers to mask the pallor and fatigue they caused. The mirror became both confessor and accomplice. A woman who appeared flawless before her guests might collapse as soon as they left. Doctors suggested safer formulas made from oyster shell or rice flour, but patients rejected them as too dull. Purity had to shine, even if it trembled. Diaries from court ladies describe mornings spent applying layer after layer until they could no longer feel their faces. Servants carried them to garden parties wrapped in silk like statues. The brighter the powder, the greater the respect. In time, the term mirror disease came to describe more than poisoning. It became shorthand for a cultural blindness. The society saw its reflection and loved it too much to change. Only in the final decades of Edo would chemists begin to question whether beauty that killed could still be called beauty at all. The reform of Meiji beauty. In the 1860s, the old shogunate began to crumble, and a new Japan hurried to remake itself. Western chemists arrived in Yokohama, carrying bottles of distilled alcohol and zinc oxide. Reformers in Tokyo founded the first cosmetic laboratories. Their mission was both patriotic and moral, to rescue beauty from the poisons that had defined it. Newspapers printed alarming notices: lead face powder causes wasting illness. Apothecaries that once sold oshi-roi quietly changed their recipes. Rice starch replaced metal, vegetable dyes replaced rust. At first, women distrusted the new products. The pale shimmer of lead had a prestige that cleanliness could not imitate. But as the Meiji era unfolded, science began to eclipse superstition. The new powders carried the scent of citrus rather than whale oil. Mirrors once fogged with decay reflected faces that could breathe again. Beauty was no longer proof of endurance, but of progress. The body, freed from the burden of slow poisoning, became a symbol of national modernity. Still, traces of the past lingered. Older geisha kept their lead paints for special performances, believing the dull ache they caused was part of the craft. In museums today, sealed jars of Edo cosmetics rest behind glass, chalk white, faintly shining silent relics of a world that believed elegance was worth any cost. The story of Edo beauty is the story of a civilization that polished its own reflection until it began to crack. Beneath the calm surface of powder and silk, every gesture carried the echo of labor and pain. Courtesans in Yoshiwara whitened their faces until the paint became a second skin. Maiko in Kyoto bled color onto their lips to honor tradition. Perfumers turned the stench of whales into perfume. Aristocrats inhaled poison for the sake of grace. And at the end, the reformers of Meiji turned that long flirtation with death into chemistry, birthing a modern industry. What united them all was belief, the conviction that beauty demanded sacrifice, that discipline could conquer decay. Disgust was not something to flee. It was a tool to refine the soul. The metallic taste of beni, the oily scent of ambergris, the weight of white paint on skin, each reminded its wearer that perfection was temporary. In the Japanese language of aesthetics, even corruption could be elegant if endured with composure. Today's foundations and perfumes descend from that legacy. They promise safety and comfort, yet their lineage runs through centuries of quiet suffering. The jars of Edo still whisper a warning. Every surface hides a story. Every gloss conceals its making. The women who lived behind those painted masks transformed pain into art, and in doing so, proved that beauty's brightest shine is often born from what we would rather not see or smell.